My mother replaced my wedding dress with her old one because she wanted me to honor the family tradition, but when my future mother-in-law surprised me with a designer dress, Mom lost it and destroyed it. Now my fiance's family is pressing charges and my parents want me to fix it. Hi everyone, I, 26F, really need some advice about a horrible situation that's tearing my family apart. I'm getting married in 2 months to my wonderful fiancé James, 28M, and what should be the happiest time of my life has turned into a complete nightmare because of my mother's obsession with family traditions. I've always had a strained relationship with my mom, and looking back now, I can see all the red flags I was trained to ignore. Growing up in our house was like walking on eggshells. You never knew what seemingly innocent thing would set off the next explosion. My childhood photos might show a smiling family, but they don't show the hours of crying and arguing that went into getting everyone to pose perfectly for those pictures. She's extremely controlling and believes that everything must be done her way or it's wrong. Growing up, I wasn't allowed to make any decisions for myself, from my clothes to my hobbies to my friends. Everything had to be pre-approved by her. My dad would occasionally try to stand up for me, but Mom would throw such massive tantrums that he'd eventually give in just to keep the peace. I met James 3 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday party. From our first date, he was different from anyone I'd ever met. He actually listened when I spoke, valued my opinions, and made me feel seen in a way I never had before. When he proposed last year, it was the happiest moment of my life. I foolishly thought that even my mother couldn't ruin this for me. I should have known better. The wedding planning started off badly when Mom insisted that I had to wear her wedding dress from 30 years ago because it's tradition in our family. The dress is incredibly outdated, yellowed with age, and honestly, just not my style at all. When I told her I wanted to pick my own dress, she burst into tears and accused me of rejecting my heritage and disrespecting her marriage. She went on and on about how every woman in our family has worn this dress and how I was breaking her heart by refusing. My mother's obsession with the dress went beyond normal sentimentality. She would spend hours telling stories about how wearing it had blessed her marriage, and how every woman who had worn it had a successful marriage, while those who refused had ended up divorced. She even claimed that her own sister's marriage failed because she had selfishly chosen to wear a new dress. I later found out from my aunt that this was completely false. She had worn my grandmother's dress and still gotten divorced, but Mom had rewritten history to fit her narrative. To keep the peace, I reluctantly agreed to at least try on the dress. It was a disaster. The fabric was disintegrating in places, it smelled musty, and it would need extensive alterations just to fit me properly. I gently explained to Mom that while I appreciated the sentiment, I really wanted my own dress that reflected my personal style. She seemed to accept it, though she was clearly unhappy. When I first went dress shopping with my bridesmaids, it was a bittersweet experience. We went to 3 different boutiques, and at each one, I couldn't help but wish my mom was there. The other brides all had their mothers with them, taking photos and tearing up at the sight of their daughters in white. Meanwhile, my mom was at home, probably clutching her old dress, and refusing to even look at the photos I sent her. My best friend Emma tried to fill the maternal role, but it wasn't the same. She did her best though, asking all the right questions about fit and style, taking countless photos, and even tearing up when I found the one. It was a beautiful A-line gown with delicate lace details that made me feel like the bride I had always dreamed of being. The consultant asked if I wanted to FaceTime my mom to show her. I lied and said she was traveling. I went dress shopping with my bridesmaids and found the perfect dress, a beautiful A-line gown with delicate lace details. It wasn't super expensive, but it made me feel like a princess. Mom refused to come to any dress fittings, saying she was too hurt to participate. I was sad but determined not to let her emotional manipulation ruin this experience for me. This is where things started to go really wrong. My future mother-in-law Sarah, who has been absolutely wonderful throughout all of this, surprised me last week with an incredible gift. She had purchased a gorgeous designer wedding dress for me. It was similar in style to the one I had picked but even more beautiful, with hand-beaded details and the most amazing train. I was overwhelmed by her generosity and kindness. When my mom found out about the new dress, she completely lost it. She showed up at my apartment while I was at work, somehow convinced my roommate to let her in. She can be very persuasive when she wants to be, and took both dresses, my original one and the designer one from Sarah. She left a note saying she was fixing the situation. I came home to find my roommate in tears. Apparently, after Mom left with the dresses, she called to confess that she had destroyed the designer dress by cutting it to pieces and then dumping bleach on it to make sure it couldn't be salvaged. Her reasoning? She couldn't let me abandon family traditions and thought that by destroying the other options, I would have no choice but to wear her old dress. I was in shock. I couldn't believe my mother would do something so cruel and destructive. The designer dress had cost Sarah several $1,000s, and more importantly, it was such a heartfelt gift. When I called Mom to confront her, she was completely unapologetic. She said she did what she had to do to preserve our family's values and that I should be grateful she was looking out for me. I immediately called Sarah and James to tell them what happened. They were understandably furious. Sarah has decided to press charges against my mother for destruction of property, and James is fully supporting his mom's decision. The police have already been contacted, and Mom is facing serious legal consequences. Now my entire family is in chaos. Dad is begging me to convince Sarah to drop the charges, saying that Mom didn't mean any harm and that she's just very traditional. My sister thinks I'm horrible for letting my future in-laws press charges against our mother. Mom is playing the victim, crying to anyone who will listen about how her daughter has turned against her and is letting her be treated like a criminal. The worst part is that my parents are now threatening to skip the wedding unless I fix this situation. They want me to beg Sarah to drop the charges and agree to wear Mom's old dress. They say that if I don't, they'll tell everyone that I chose my in-laws over my own family and that I'm a heartless daughter who doesn't care about family traditions. Part 2. My mother replaced my wedding dress with her old one because she wanted me to honor the family tradition, but when my future mother-in-law surprised me with a designer dress, Mom lost it and destroyed it. Now my fiance's family is pressing charges and my parents want me to fix it. I'm standing firm in my decision to support Sarah's right to press charges. What my mother did was wrong, and she needs to face consequences for her actions. But I'd be lying if I said this isn't killing me inside. I always dreamed of having both my parents at my wedding, and the thought of walking down the aisle without them is breaking my heart. James has been my rock through all of this. He says that we can postpone the wedding if I want to, but I don't want to let my mother's actions control my life anymore. I've spent too many years doing that already. Update 1. Thank you all for your overwhelming support and advice. The past week has been incredibly difficult, but your comments have helped me stay strong in my decision not to give in to my mother's manipulation. A lot has happened since my last post. The police investigation is moving forward, and my mother has been formally charged with criminal damage to property. When the police interviewed her, she actually tried to justify her actions by saying she was protecting her daughter from outside influences trying to destroy our family traditions. The officers were not impressed. Sarah has been absolutely amazing through all of this. When I went to her house to explain what happened, expecting anger and disappointment, she just hugged me and let me cry. She shared that she had also dealt with a controlling mother-in-law who had tried to ruin her own wedding 30 years ago. But look at me now, she said with a gentle smile. I've been happily married for 3 decades, and that woman's attempts to ruin things only made my marriage stronger. She told me not to worry about the dress and that we'll find another one together. She shared stories of her own wedding dress shopping experience, and how she had to try on 20 dresses before finding the one. Her warmth and understanding made me realize what real maternal love looks like. It's not about control or traditions, it's about supporting and uplifting your child. After the dress incident, my dad finally stood up to Mom and told her that her behavior was completely unacceptable. He moved out temporarily to give her space to reflect on her actions. During this time, she started frantically calling family members, claiming I was destroying her life and that Sarah was trying to steal me away. While most relatives saw through her manipulation and supported me, a few bought into her version of events and sent hurtful messages. My sister eventually came around after I showed her all the threatening texts Mom had sent me before and after the dress incident. She finally admitted that Mom's behavior has always been controlling and toxic, but we were all too conditioned to see it as normal. The wedding is still on, though we've hired security to make sure Mom can't crash it if she's not invited. I'm trying to focus on the positive aspects, marrying the love of my life, gaining an amazing mother-in-law, and finally standing up to my mother's controlling behavior. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update, and things have taken an unexpected turn. My mother's court date was set, but before that could happen, she had what appeared to be a mental breakdown. She showed up at my workplace, wearing her old wedding dress, causing a huge scene and screaming about family curses and betrayal. The day Mom showed up at my workplace was surreal. I was in the middle of a client meeting when our receptionist burst in, looking panicked. Through the glass walls of our conference room, I could see my mother twirling in her yellowed wedding dress, throwing what looked like rose petals everywhere while screaming about family curses. The dress was even more decrepit than I remembered, with visible tears and stains. She had apparently tried to repair it herself with safety pins and staples, which were now falling off as she spun around. My colleagues watched in horror as she pointed at me through the glass, shrieking about ungrateful daughters and broken traditions. Security had to remove her, and she was subsequently taken to the hospital for evaluation. The doctors have diagnosed her with several mental health issues that apparently have gone untreated for years. The aftermath of Mom's workplace meltdown was chaotic. My colleagues were incredibly supportive, but I could still feel the whispers and stares in the days that followed. My boss called me into his office the next morning, and I was certain I was about to be fired. Instead, he shared his own story about dealing with a family member's mental health crisis and offered me additional time off if I needed it. The security footage of the incident was both heartbreaking and enlightening. Watching it with my dad and sister in the hospital's family room, we could all see what we had been trying to ignore for years. Mom wasn't just being difficult or traditional, she was clearly unwell. The way she moved, the disconnect in her speech, the wild look in her eyes, it was like watching a stranger wearing my mother's face. Dad finally admitted that Mom has always had episodes, but the family got good at hiding them, pretending everything was normal. Sarah, showing incredible grace, has decided to drop the criminal charges on the condition that Mom gets proper psychiatric help and agrees to stay away from me until she's stable. In the letter, Mom poured out years of guilt and regret. She wrote about her own mother's controlling behavior, about the day she wore the wedding dress against her will, and how she had promised herself she would never be like that with her own daughter. Somewhere along the way, she wrote, "I became exactly what I feared most. I was so focused on preserving traditions that I forgot to preserve our relationship." She went on to describe her therapy sessions, how she was learning to recognize her triggers and control her reactions. She enclosed a small piece of lace from her wedding dress, not as a demand that I use it, but as an acknowledgement that she was letting go. "This is the last piece of that dress," she wrote. "I finally understood that holding on to it was hurting us both, so I donated what was left of it to a theatrical costume shop. They were delighted to have vintage material for their historical productions." The therapist working with Mom has suggested that her obsession with the wedding dress was actually a symptom of her underlying mental health issues. "I'm feeling a mix of emotions, relief that Mom is finally getting help, anger that her condition was hidden for so long, and sadness for all the years we could have had a better relationship if she'd gotten treatment sooner." James and Sarah continue to be incredibly supportive, and we found a beautiful new wedding dress together. Update 3. The wedding was yesterday, and I can finally say I had the day of my dreams, though not in the way I originally imagined. My dad walked me down the aisle, and while Mom wasn't there physically, she did something that showed real progress. She sent me a handwritten letter apologizing for her behavior and acknowledging that her actions were wrong. Part 3. My mother replaced my wedding dress with her old one because she wanted me to honor the family tradition, but when my future mother-in-law surprised me with a designer dress, Mom lost it and destroyed it. Now my fiance's family is pressing charges and my parents want me to fix it. Her therapist helped her write it, and for the first time in my life, it felt like a genuine apology rather than manipulation. She's been in intensive therapy for 2 months now, and while we have a long way to go, there's hope for eventual reconciliation. The ceremony was beautiful, and Sarah helped me get ready in the morning, just like a mother should. My new dress was actually even more perfect than either of the previous ones. It was a blend of modern style with some vintage-inspired details that honor tradition while still being uniquely me. Looking back, this whole experience taught me valuable lessons about standing up for myself and recognizing toxic behavior, even from family. It also showed me that sometimes the family you choose can be more supportive than the one you're born into. James and I are starting our married life with clear boundaries and a strong support system, and I couldn't be happier. The road to healing with my mother will be long, but for the first time, I feel hopeful about our future relationship. Her willingness to acknowledge her problems and seek help is a huge step forward. For now, I'm focusing on my new life with James and grateful for the loving, drama-free relationship I have with my in-laws. Final update. It's been 6 months since the wedding, and I wanted to share one final update because something amazing happened. Mom has been consistently attending therapy and taking her medication, and the change in her is remarkable. Last week, she invited me to lunch, with my permission and in a public place, and we had our first real, honest conversation in years. The lunch meeting with my mother 6 months after the wedding was both terrifying and healing. We met at a small cafe downtown, neutral territory that held no emotional baggage for either of us. I arrived early and spent 15 minutes second-guessing my decision to come. James had offered to wait nearby in case things went badly, but I knew this was something I needed to do alone. Mom looked different, softer somehow, without the rigid posture and sharp edges that had defined her for so long. She was wearing casual clothes, something I'd rarely seen growing up. I spent 2 hours trying to decide what to wear, she admitted with a self-deprecating laugh. Then my therapist helped me realize I was falling into old patterns of trying to control everything. So I just picked something comfortable. She broke down and told me how much she regrets her actions and how the therapy has helped her understand why she was so controlling. Apparently, she had a similarly controlling mother who forced her to wear the family wedding dress, and she was perpetuating the cycle of toxicity without realizing it. We're taking baby steps in rebuilding our relationship. She's accepting that she needs to earn back trust and respect, and she's finally developing a healthy relationship with boundaries. She's even started sending Sarah thank you cards for being there for me when she couldn't be. Looking back at my childhood now, with the clarity of therapy and time, I can see how my mother's untreated condition affected every aspect of our lives. It wasn't just about the big moments like birthdays or holidays, it was in the small, daily things too. The way she would reorganize my backpack every morning before school, claiming I'd done it wrong. How she would throw away clothes she deemed inappropriate without asking, even if they were perfectly modest by anyone else's standards. The constant rewriting of our family history to fit her narrative of perfection. But now, watching her work through her issues in therapy, I'm starting to understand her better. She was parenting from a place of fear of losing control, fear of imperfection, fear of repeating her own mother's mistakes. Ironically, by trying so hard not to be like her mother, she ended up creating the same cycle of control and resentment. Dad has moved back home now that Mom is stable, and they're both in couples counseling. My sister and I are also in family therapy together, working through our shared trauma and building a stronger relationship. The healing process hasn't been linear. There are still difficult days and moments when old patterns try to resurface. Last month, Mom had a minor setback when she saw photos of my cousin's wedding on social media. She called me in tears, apologizing again for ruining my special day and missing the ceremony. But this time was different. Instead of spiraling into manipulation, she recognized her triggers and used the coping mechanisms she'd learned in therapy. She even managed to laugh about the absurdity of her former obsession with the old dress. "You know," she said, "I found pictures of my mother's wedding recently. She didn't wear a family dress either, she chose her own. Somehow that detail got lost in all the family stories. Makes you wonder how many other traditions we cling to are really just choices someone made once." James and I are settling into married life beautifully, and Sarah continues to be the supportive mother figure I always needed. The most surprising development has been the relationship between my mother and Sarah. Last month, they actually met for coffee, something I never thought would happen. Sarah later told me that Mom spent most of the time apologizing and asking for advice on how to be a better mother. "She's doing the work," Sarah told me. "Real change takes time, but she's genuinely trying." James and I are settling into married life beautifully, and Sarah continues to be the supportive mother figure I always needed. We've started our own traditions: Sunday dinners at Sarah's, monthly cooking lessons where she teaches me family recipes, and regular mother-daughter spa days. These aren't obligations forced upon us by guilt or fear, they're choices we make out of love and mutual respect. Mom is slowly being included in some of our gatherings, always with clear boundaries and expectations. Last week, she brought a photo album to our family dinner, not of weddings or forced perfect moments, but of candid shots she'd found from my childhood. "I was looking through these," she said, "and I realized I missed so many real moments because I was too busy trying to create perfect ones." This experience, though painful, led to necessary changes in our family dynamic. Sometimes it takes a complete breakdown of the old to build something new and better. To everyone who supported me through this journey, thank you. Standing firm against toxic behavior isn't easy, especially when it comes from family, but it's often necessary for real change to happen. I'm proof that happy endings are possible, even if the road to get there is harder than we expected.